I just found out.
Okay, folks, let's begin. Welcome everybody to this third public meeting on the rates issue. I'm Bill Dolan, your independent facilitator for this event. We have several apologies. Amy, would you like to speak to that?
Thanks, Bill. Just want to apologise for apology to Councillor Maynard and Chair of Martinborough.
Thank you. Before we start the business of the evening, there's some administrative requirements that I need to cover off. Keep your masks on as you move around. You can take them off when you're seated. But for those who would be more comfortable keeping them on, then please do so. Obviously, you can take them off if you wish to speak. The emergency exits are on either side and at the rear. Toilets are through that door to the left and up the passageway a little bit past our flash banking facility. In the case of an earthquake, the assembly point is the playground just out the front. On the podium, to deliver the material tonight, we have Mayor Alex Baird, well known to most of you, and Council CEO Harry Wilson, also a familiar figure. We have councillors and community board members seated down the wall, all keen to have a talk to you later if you wish. And we have several council officers helping out with the arrangements, also recording all your questions and interventions. And in case you're interested, this meeting will be live streamed. The meeting is scheduled to go through to 8 o'clock sharp, and the presentation will be in two parts. First of all, a review of events leading up to now, and the second part, the way forward and options. There'll be a break after each section for you to ask questions and give your feedback. All the questions will be recorded and answered either directly or via the council's website in due course. Now, it'll be my responsibility to see that all who wish to speak get an opportunity to do so. Let me ask of those who have spoken at previous meetings just to keep your interventions or comments brief, so as to give everybody who wishes to speak an opportunity to do so.
Well, apparently our opinions don't matter, because the mayor wrote a letter on paper that said ratepayers' views didn't really matter.
Let's move on, we'll come back to you later. Now, rules of the game. Obviously, and clearly this is a contentious issue, which has stirred up pretty strong feelings in the community, and debate, which everyone is fairly familiar with and has a view on. But to keep the discussion manageable and on track, I would ask you to stick to the following courtesies. If you wish to speak, raise your hand, give your name, and when invited to speak, I'll make sure that everyone speaks in order. There will only be one speaker at a time. We have a roving microphone, so please use it. Please, no shouting from the floor while the Mayor and the CEO are speaking. It's not an election meeting. And attempts at point scoring will just be distracting and take up valuable time. Keep your comments and questions as brief as you can. And above all, focus on the issues, please, not individuals, elected officials, or council staff. You all happy with that? Good. Now I ask Mayor Mayor to begin the first part.
Do you have a point of order or clarification, sir, if I may? On the 21st of July, it was stated that July 21, the council stated there was no need for public meetings. They would prefer individual meetings. We had problems. On the 7th of October, at a meeting on the Martinborough.
Please, can you just hold it there and we'll come back to you.
No, sir, I think it's valuable because you're setting the rules for the meeting. So I didn't want to make it quick. We were told.
Could you please give them the roving microphone because we cannot hear them.
All right.
Make it quick.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
We were told on the 7th of October that we would have public meetings with an independent mediator, and they would be held prior to the next council meeting of the 27th of the 11th, so the councils could hear our questions and therefore decide what they could tell us. 6 days later, at the next Martinborough Community Board meeting on the 13th of October, we were confirmed that the meetings were happening. We were confirmed that we had an independent mediator. However, we were now told that the council was having an extraordinary meeting on the 27th of October prior to the meeting with the public, so that they could look at what they could do about the rates and tell us at this meeting. My question is, why were the ground rules shifted? Why do we feel we are being sharp? Thank you.
Thank you for your further question, Clem. At the council meeting, so we listened. Our first stance was not to have public meetings, but we are now having public meetings, so thank you. What we decided at the last council meeting was not a resolution on going forward, but more a preferred position going forward, which we will show, and you've already seen in previous meetings, that this is what we're thinking of doing, and it is not set in stone until the 17th of November, when we will, after these public meetings, when we've taken all the notes, we've listened to the feedback, and we'll make a decision then. So I trust that answers your question.
Not entirely certain. Why would the format of the meeting change from 1 week to the next?
I'm unsure.
There's a difference in having a public meeting where the public speaks and you listen. To have you speak and us listen is a total reverse of what we were told.
We've been to a number of the meetings, and we certainly have a massive space for people to give their opinions, and we take the notes from that. So I'm not sure where you're coming from with regards to not listening to the public. So anyway,
Trust, sir.
So we now move on. So, as Mr. Beck has kindly pointed out, we are here because we recognise that you wanted to be heard, and we're providing that opportunity. We recognise that the rates impact has been hard on some of you. It was not intentional, but it matters, and it's important to us to hear what you say. So we're here to give you ample opportunity to provide feedback, to set the record straight on other matters, and provide information on how we arrived where we are today.
Like technology issues, sorry.
Technology glitch. Cool. Sorry about that. So the process we go through to set the rates starts with identifying what projects we need to undertake and what levels of service the council should provide. So this year and last year, our communities, we are facing an increased number of significant challenges. We have a relatively small population, yet we have a third of the Wellington region as a land area. And we need to respond to rising costs. If we are to bring your infrastructure up to standard and to the levels that you and the government expect of us, we have to manage the realities brought about through previous lack of investment. We know that every resident should expect to have access to safe and clean water, sewage, and wastewater systems. Every resident wants to have a safe community and neighbourhood. Our roading systems need to be safe and well maintained. We have a duty to provide core services like refuse collection, libraries, business and train services, parks and reserves, community centres, planning and building consents, to name a few. However, all of these services require additional funding. All of these services at this last election, were criticised by the electors. So last year, our costs were higher. We've kept our rates at a lower level than many other councils in the past 10 years. And we need to now catch up and catch up very fast. We also need to try and do it in an equitable way that's fair to all. And we need to face challenges in this area with the rating system that we have. So we cannot continue to let future ratepayers subsidise the cost of those things that previous ratepayers should have paid for. So we are, in our the last 2 years, rates increase reflect this. We're seeing a number of significant issues coming together that will directly affect and impact our communities. We are seeing a rising cost and responsibility for climate change. We have rising house valuations and prices. We have transport issues. We have a local government review, which I welcome. We have the 3 waters reforms, which I don't necessarily welcome. We'll see how that pans out. And we have changes to the combined district plan this year. And we have RMA reforms, which significantly change the way the councils operate. So this is the environment that is when we're in council, when we're looking at what we need in order to run the council to a level that is in our consultation, we're told by the public, but also the government demands of us. I'll just pass over to Harry now about last year in COVID.
So Alex mentioned we were looking at a 14.5% increase in the previous year. That was based on, remember far back, Coal operates here in Martinborough. We had Wellington Water come in and look at all of our drinking water supplies. Not one of the drinking water supplies in all of our 3 towns and Berwick was compliant with the national drinking water standards. To resolve the Martinborough's problem alone, we had to chlorinate, and to resolve the issue of chlorination and manganese in our water supply, we had to put in the manganese extraction plant. So we didn't end up with brown, dirty, unclean water in our towns. So we had significant challenges, not just on water supply. You also winding back the clock in that year, there were a number of wastewater discharges in the Martinborough River. Then that wasn't an operating mistake. Some fundamental issues with designs of our Martinborough plant. There have been some periods of time when the river is low, the storage ponds are full, and we're unable to irrigate because the ground is saturated. So we have significant problems in terms of just simply meeting our basic environmental responsibilities to provide water that doesn't pollute our waterways. So the council was very aware of this range of issues, let alone you'll all recall the issues to do with the Cane Farm, the under maintenance that had not been done from the council. We had to bring this up to standard, and that was gone across a lot of our amenities. So the council decided on 14.5% rate increase and was going to go there. Unfortunately, COVID occurred. And if, again, we will wind back the clock to the COVID, all the economic commentators were saying that there's going to be a recession, there's going to be high structural unemployment in New Zealand, and our economy is going to be in a recession. So council looked at that, they're facing down the barrel of 14.5% rate increase. Thought about what they could do to offset that impact on families and on our ratepayers, on older people, on low income, on very fixed incomes, and decided that 14.5 was too much to ask, but we could offset that by taking it below. So council. We're going to way. Sorry. So instead of asking ratepayers for 14.5%, we decided to offset the costs and ask for 4.3% rate increase. So we could make up the shortfall by borrowing to offset our operating budget. But that expenditure remained. That level of expenditure at 14.5% was the baseline that we then calculated the increase in expenditure that the council required to continue to improve the services and to make sure that we had revenue for rates to offset that. And that's where the problem has occurred. So we needed to maintain our infrastructure. You were telling us, our other councils were telling us we wanted to improve our rating, amenities, our wastewater. So the long-term plan proposed $20 million for all of our services, including maintenance and upgrades in 2021-22. And most importantly, without reducing service levels. So how do we get in this situation? So in front of you have a slide pack. Just to show you the graph, it's a little bit complicated to see on the screen. So if you want to turn to page 12, I'll just explain how this works. So you have expenditure over the 4-year periods from 2018 to the current year 2021-22 on the right-hand side. The blue line shows the increase in revenue or income required by council to fund our services. So we look at what we need to spend, and then we work out a proportion of rates, because rates are only 71% of the revenue the council requires to run the services. So if you look at the little blue box up there, that's the loan of 1.5 million. So the rates calculation that we gave you at 4.3% for that financial year was based on the 18 million. The 1.5 million carried through as expenditure. So when you compare the expenditure that was needed in the 2021-22 year, it was actually 17.9 million over the 14% in the previous year. So that's the bit that we did not communicate with. So that is the bit we did not communicate with. So come to that. I'm just explaining where the problem, where the issue arises. So just to put this in perspective, people who focused on percentages. So I'd just like to talk, first of all, how do we compare with other councils in the Wairau? And so we'll give you some information here that's in your slide pack that sits beyond this. You'll see year on year, over a 10-year period, level pegging in terms of rates with Carston, as an example, at 6.8%. Over a 10-year period, we're still in the same place as our colleagues. By contrast, to just make that material in terms of the dollars that people pay in their rates. The South Wairarapa average urban rate in dollar terms is 3,500. The Cardigan District Council is 4,292. So we're still 20% in dollar terms below our nearest neighbour council. So I just want to just explain the materiality.
Please, will you keep your interventions until we break?
And just to give you more information,
That's okay.
I invite you
You
to.
actually said this is going to be talking about our current rates.
We're-
To Carlton, it's totally irrelevant. Compare the land size and
Please,
please talk about the
please
dollars.
wait until we break.
This is just to give some context in terms of the dollar value of our rates compared to our rates. Just to give some information. Also, Alex referred to the relative investment over the 10-year period. And so we've given you in the slide pack just the 10-year breakdown of where our rates have sat in that contrast. And if you look at that, you'll find the previous councils, Central Group, were investing at a rate of construction index about 3%. So there was no money being spent on improving the assets the council has. Okay, the other thing that happens is always a perfect storm. So COVID delayed the property evaluations around the country. So we base our waiving rate on land value. And so every 3 years, there's a revaluation of land. And on average, the revaluation of land has gone up by 30% across the South Wairarapa district. We didn't receive, normally we receive that information in September, so we can take that into account when we're putting out our consultation documents. We didn't get them until February. So we were running blind, so we had to use the 2018 valuation figures. So just for completeness, because people have asked, we've still had a number of questions about our total rating line. Just for completeness, also in your rates is included the Greater Wellington Regional Council. I know that may be obvious to many of you, but we actually still are getting questions about what is this. So it's just important to explain that a portion of the rates demands are also from Greater Wellington Regional Council. So just to go over, because again, a number of people have said, where does our income come from and what do we spend it on? So I'll just go over that briefly. And then a couple more slides, we'll have the opportunity for you to start firing away your questions and your concerns so we can respond. So just to give you a context, because people still think that our expenditure equals rates. Rates are actually 71% of our income. So they're not all our income. We charge fees for a lot of our public protection, resource consents, building consents and so forth. So we've used levies. And so here's a little breakdown for you showing where the portion comes from. Just again, the grey shaded area, which you can't really see, is interest income. And so where does your money go? So this is what we put out in the consultation document that indicated where council would be spending its money. Because there are a lot of commentary from people saying, well, what if you took money from here, which is more comfortable to this slide. I think it's important just to explain. So, and if you look at this in a summary, 72%, nearly 3/4 of council's expenditure is around water, roading, amenities, and disposing of rubbish. 72% is the exact number for those that are interested. So that's, we set levels of service for how we do that. So we set the standards, performance standards about quality of our roads, disposal of waste and so forth. We call that level of service. So just to assure you that the bulk of council's money is based on basic infrastructure and things that we enjoy. So that brings us here. But the rates increased, I mentioned in 2021, was reduced by the way. So people compared between the 2 years, a rate level of 4.3 and adhered to 21% on average rate increase. We are really, really sorry. That was not communicated. That was not communicated. We should have done a better job. We should have made sure the message got to you. And we should have made sure everyone understands the reason, which is why we put out editorials, we send mailers around to people's mailboxes to explain this, and this is why we're holding a public meeting, so we can get it.
So we're now paying for your apology as well.
So,
I'm sorry, I can't afford to pay my rent.
so what we because the important thing with all these situations when we make mistakes, what did you do from what you can do? So pretty important. So the second part of the slide of the presentation, I think get a chance to get their questions about the options that the council is considered. And as Alex very clearly pointed out, that is just simply a position to take to these meetings so that we can gather your views. So nothing's locked in stone. Council will be making a decision based on the feedback that you provide to us, as he mentioned at our November meeting on the 17th. So what we do, we will communicate. We are looking at tools that in real time give you information on your rates increases. So what we call a rates calculator. So you can literally plug into your property and see what the rates impact will be in real time, not wait until you receive your rates increase. We're not going to take loans again. We thought we were trying to be helpful, but they have not been helpful, as I'm explaining. And most importantly, we won't rush the process. If we'd had more time, we would have been able to take into account the impact of property valuations, which is distorting the picture as we speak. So look, I'm going to pause here. The second part of the presentation is the position of council would like to talk to you about. But I want to happy to take any questions and any thoughts that you have.
Harry, you talked a lot about the cost. What is your profit out of the current last financial year? June 21. What was the profit? Why is it then carried over? And obviously it's our rates. Why are we having a $4 million increase in public equity under this budget? All right, you can cut those, carry forward the previous profit. We've got a balanced budget, and the rates probably taken care of.
So first and foremost, we budgeted for a deficit. So in the previous financial year, we budgeted for a deficit. Answer the question.
But if I'm budgeting for, my budget question, what was your surplus for the last financial year?
We haven't confirmed it has not been audited.
Doesn't need to be audited. Tell us the unaudited surplus.
Sorry.
It's a very simple question.
It needs to be.
Today, you have at least a 2.7 million surplus.
So we budgeted for a deficit. So, as I said, we need to get the accounts, Mr. Anderson, we need to get our accounts audited.
But
We need
no
to.
rule that says they have to be audited before this year.
Mr. Anderson, any responsible organisation who is presenting financial information requires it to have any auditors. It is standard.
One speaker at a time.
So Mr. Anderson has asked a question around the statement of financial position, which is our balance sheet position, and it's not a statement of cash. So if we, page 108 of the long-term plan, you'll see for this year, there's a total movement, which includes movements in and out of reserves, it includes movements from development contributions, property revaluation. It's a balance sheet surplus.
Your
So
cash flow statement doesn't even have the right balance of money for investment. It says it's 4.8 million. You look at your balance sheet and it's over 11 million. There is no credibility with it. So I want you to answer the system. Second problem is our chance to speak. You can listen and answer the question. What is your surplus for 21?
our surplus is 4.7 million.
Right. So why is that?
That is an asset. That includes the battery.
It's a surplus.
It is
It's not too much money.
It is
Talk
not.
about costs and they're going up to put in. See, we don't care about that because you've got more revenue than you need.
No.
That can be carried over to the next financial year.
Mr. Anderson, so this is a balance sheet equation.
No,
It is to do with revaluation of assets, its movement into our reserves. It is.
I've got the page here.
It is.
And there's a different light. Equity price is going up 4 million. You do not need to have a retained profit of that amount when we're paying too much.
This is not cash. This is not a cash surplus that can be provided to offset operating costs.
You've got a limit in cash.
Your understanding of accounting and mine is completely different. And you might have a different view, but this is audited. This is audited by Audit New Zealand against international financial standards in terms of the way the councils and any responsible body and you can read the audit opinion in the report as you have today. Thank you.
Through the chair, can we ask for that question to be answered back to us properly, the previous question? Can we
You want to spend more time again on that
Can
issue?
we get that surplus question answered back to all the ratepayers?
It's actually in your FAQs. So the FAQs were sent out to you, it contains the answer to that question.
Thank you. Excuse me, madam.
Yeah, I just wanted to. We all hear this. My main question is that I believe part of the responsibility of councillors or at the council is to act responsibly for the ratepayers and to make sure it's affordable to the residents. Can you please explain to us the process that you did to make sure that was, carried out properly? To make sure people can afford this.
Okay. So when I did mention earlier in the slides, so when we look at what we must do, there's no, in this rates increase over the last 2 years, there's nothing nice to have. We're not building a civic centre. We're not going on flights of fancy on really cool buildings and bridges. We have to calculate what it is required to fulfill our obligations to the government, to fulfill a correct stewardship of our current assets, and that comes to a dollar value. So you'll probably see when we, in a future slide, when we say, okay, let's nut down and look at where savings could be made. And actually they're few and far between, because we're only doing the absolute minimum we have to do to fulfill our obligations.
And it's a very bad voice from the community that a lot of people cannot afford this increase. So how is that you've done due diligence to make sure it's affordable? I don't understand.
We understand this is, we don't
understand, but she's got a point.
Could you please be quiet? No. What we try to do is say, what do we require to do the absolute minimum, and what can we do that's nice to have? And there's nothing nice to have. So I understand what you're saying about rates increases, but what you're seeing is that the rates have been abnormally and artificially low for 10 years. When we did the comparison with Carsten, now, and I know you say it's not relevant, but it is, because we are 3 times the land area, we have 3 swimming pools, we have 3 libraries, and we're still managing to create a budget that manages to address and maintain those services at 20% less. It is quite relevant because they are a very similar council, but we share a lot of services. So if you're looking at a cost base to do the right thing, we're actually running very efficiently. And you'll see when we look at what is optional, there's very little.
But I think a lot of people debate whether it is essential some of the stuff we're doing. Like painting streets, it's senior budget.
Look, at least if you can come up with ideas to say, can you cut this area, can you cut this area? We've got ideas from the other 2 meetings that we've had. We're more than happy to consider that. Right? We'll get to that in another slide because we have looked at wages. Thank you.
Yeah, where's the detailed budget?
Excuse me, one speaker at a time, please.
What I would like to know is how apologies will fix it.
Well, we apologise for the stuff up because it was not clearly communicated, as Harry said, that last year the loan hid the rates increase and it came to a head this year with a double whammy. We are not apologising for the requirements and the lack of infrastructure spend by previous councils, because we're only doing what we must do. But we do apologise for the fact that it was not communicated well, that Audit New Zealand didn't pick it up, and we should have done better.
Staffing and freezing. Like seriously.
The reason it wasn't communicated.
Well, just leave it at the time, please.
Well, I'm speaking right now, that's one of the times.
You're not. No, she finished, absolutely.
I'm going to take a slightly different stance on this. The way I see it, council wasn't given enough money. Will we right there, the next slide? Yes. So I don't see it making any difference if we put the rates up 40% for the agency or 50%. They're still not going to have enough money. We've got the water infrastructure of this town is shot. We've got chlorine going through the pipes, it's making the manganese off the pipes, it's probably the one together at the moment. We've had manganese in the past. That's taking the whole length right through the town anyway, so that it's going to continue the pipes have to be replaced. And I don't know if I've got a figure then about 40 million for that. It's a massive job. So I don't see, we're talking about the rates going up. I see there's only one way to get out of it. So the stuff is from that Dublin Street, I travel there every day. The guys on the trucks down around, it's bad enough for you. The verge of not being mowed, there's not enough money. So I think central government, they're going to fund the bridge across the Auckland Harbour. It's 900 million. And when you take, that's what the budget is. Okay. So what the hands okay, well, that's one thing.
Infrastructure, they need a lot of money. That's a lot of future.
We can't afford that. We need money from central government.
Mr. Clark, you're absolutely correct.
Thank you.
And if I could explain myself, but the current situation with the looming costs to council is totally untenable. And there are two things that's happening in that area. One is that there's a review of local government, and hopefully the government will take notice of it in the fact that since they got rid of the Ministry of Works in 1992, councils have been left on their own with regards to infrastructural investment apart from roads. And there must be a different way of doing it. What we can influence is a rating review, and we will be consulting fully with everyone on that. But it is, do we move to a more user pays? How do we make sure that we put equity back into rural ratepayers who are paying for urban facilities that they don't, or services they don't get? There's a huge amount in moving from a land value rating system to a capital value, so that each section is not paying the same rates as a $3 million house next door. There's a lot that we need to do in this ratings area, and we've been in 2 years, and that has started now with the full rating review. And I think that there's certainly areas in the user pays perspective and developer contributions that we can start to chip away and the income moving away from rates and into the council itself. As well, compared to other councils, we have very few income earning assets. We don't have a centre, we don't have a Wellington airport, we don't have parking. And that really hurts us with regards to the burden of whatever we do generally for non-rates.
I have 2 points to make and a question. First one is, with all due respect, can you please get the management questions to actually answer them? Like this young lady asked for due diligence on the process, and as the moderator, we would expect you to actually ask the questions to be answered with all due respect. Thank you. Number 2 is, there's been lots of conversation about the previous councils not doing work. So are you saying they were incompetent? And if they were, how do we have your say now that you're not as incompetent as they are?
Right, so with regards to due diligence, we consulted with the public on what service levels were required to be provided by the council, and with costs associated with that. And we had over 800 submissions, which is a massive amount, and we had to take that into account when setting our service levels and therefore our costs that will be going forward over the next 10 years.
It was about the costs, though. The other lady was actually asking, how would you sit down and morally understand what people are going to need to do to actually pay for this budget that we put together? What was your moral process? What was the moral jurisdiction that you were working through?
The moral process was that there was no flights of fancy or nice to have symbols. It was a minimum zero budget with regards to nice to have. We had to.
My actual question, my question is, there's been lots of conversation about the loan, but there's been no conversation about how long the loan's been taken out for, when it's being paid, how long it's being paid.
And I think that's been answered in a lot of the FAQs, and it has been. So the loan was for 1.5 million in the 2021 year. It was taken out over a 5-year period, so it's been paid back with interest over a 5-year period.
It's approximately about $150 per person since they're 7,000.
Plus,
$150, I can we'll pay that now and then we get the loan a little bigger.
the problem you have is when you borrow money for operating expenses not pushed against an asset. That's I think it's bad accounting. We wouldn't do it again, but we were reacting to a massive amount of both government and public pressure to keep the rates down or do a zero rate increase.
But the point is, why don't we just pay that loan off? It's $12 per annum over 30 years, or it's about $200 to pay off in 2
You're
years.
taking the loan out over a 5-year period at a relatively low interest rate, and then we don't want to break that. We place that, so we're paying it back over a 5-year period, which is quite accelerated.
So take the loan away, our rates went up 32%. If you take the loan away, our rates all went up 24%.
Yeah, the loan.
Thank you. Look, I first publicly I've been a ratepayer for 30 years this year. And I quite enjoy this actually, just seeing the community get together and voice and support. I like to support the council. I want to support you local community. I'm a lifestyle, ours is about 41%. I run a business with a turnover close to revenue. If I went to my stakeholders in our business and I raised it by 41% I would have a effing job. That's really simple. So I'm glad to stand up and apologise now. I know where you're coming from. But man, that's the first mistake. Second one is 41% for me as a lifestyle. Am I going to see those services? Are you guys going to put street lights on Martinborough Road now and give my water? I'm just out of water, which I did make a provision because I don't pay the same rates as an urban. But now I'm paying higher rates close to urban rates. Are you guys going to start giving me water and sewage? Okay, that's that. The other thing too, you guys must have known about free waters. This has just come along. The government have come up with this free waters thing, and I understand that they're up against it. But they're taking the asset, they're going to manage the asset. So you guys read this through before free waters has come into effect. I mean, this is racist to me of a premeditated grand rates increase. You might have high costs, but my question to the executive is how is it free waters, if it does go through, how is that going to affect our rates? Is that going to reduce our rates?
So you've got 3 parts there.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity.
The first one is the product of our land value rating system, which we're trying to get rid of. And that's where you see swings and properties that have increased in value outside the norm. And even though our income take remains static, the way that is distributed is according to the way the valuer general has decided that they're going to approach government valuations. So it's a real pain and it's not right. With regards to, and that comes where we go down to the rating review, that we need to look at equity with rural v urban, because in the past, a lot of urban services have been put into a UHES or a general charge across all ratepayers, even though rural people aren't receiving those services. And we need to change that and make it more equitable and hopefully soften the blow. The risk of this is that if we actually had a very equitable way of rating according to usage, you would see next, at the end of that rating review, urban rates go up because the correct apportionment of costs will be made. So we need to, in that rating review, structure that and look at more user pays and stop that from occurring. And so we are mindful of that. 3 waters. Three Waters is, we've known about it for a couple of years. We must continue as if we didn't know what was going to happen. Was the government going to count? Was it actually going to be pushed to be made mandatory? What's the economic regulator going to say? At what point do rural come? There are a lot of unknowns that we are saying it's business as usual until such time as we know the details. Because that would be, and assuming that we have a responsibility for water, we are continuing to invest. The risk of Three Waters, so when Three Waters occurs, the current amount of money that we showed on a graph there that's being spent on water will be removed. And it will go to a water entity, C, that we're in. We do not know what that water charge is going to be. The government is currently, the minister is ducking and diving over whether there will be a surcharge for the use of water. We don't know whether they're going to build $100 million plants when a $30 million plant might work, because they know that they can recover the money with no argument. So there's a lot of risks for us, but I think that's a different conversation, and we are still working through the way the government is actually creating its governance structure. So we are all over it, but it's still very murky. Yeah.
Thanks for that. Good evening, folks. My name's Dave Millings. I'm the Deputy Chair of Martinborough Community Board. I'm just standing up here to ask a question which has been referred to me by one of our elderly ratepayers who wanted this question raised tonight here. Our ratepayer has watched the recent council meeting online where almost $250,000 in grants was awarded, with the South Warwick district's population of 7,000 or so, compared to the Upper Hutt City Council's population of 46,000. So Upper Hutt City Council had awarded $129,000 in grants. So what the ratepayer wants to know is why does this money need to be given out in this time of hardships that our communities are suffering at the moment? I would like to see things like grants being reassessed now that we've got increased rates and the council's trying to save some money and costs around the district, for example, on mowing. That was a question that one of our ratepayers.
Thank you, Aidan. It's a very good question. It's one that we actually discussed. By the time we got around to going, okay, where are the cost cuttings? We had a number of applications for funding in that area. Now, those fundings, that 250,000, which is broken up to community and youth. At the moment, a lot of the community and youth services rely on it. They can either go to the community board for funding up to a maximum of $1,000, or they can come to council for larger. And then, like Forikaka, which regularly receive funding, community networks, Alzheimer's. So if we want to go cold turkey on them, they're going to in the coming years, yes, we can look at that and say, actually, we've got to pull back on our community funding. But we can't do it cold turkey quickly when they're expecting the money. So we need to give them early warning advice on other alternatives. But we agonised over all those grants.
So the second thing I just want to cover off is, so actions speak louder than words. Now, in the question and answers here that have been supplied to us on paragraph 21, page 8 of the handout states that the average yearly rate has increased $695 over 2 years. Now, outside the average ratepayers who have spoken to me and other community board members here at Martinborough who live in town, who are pensioners on one income, not one of them has had their rates go up by $695. They're all suffering increases of $900 to $1,200 this coming year. The average rural ratepayer in this document says their rates have been increased by $537 over 2 years, according to the handout. Yet the farmers who are talking to us, and our average hard-working farmers, have had their rates increased from 1 year from $9,000 up to $15,000 or $2,000 up to $6,000 and so on. So these increases are way above the reported average in the document. Those increases are hitting the ratepayers, they're hitting our communities and their savings accounts. And ratepayers have come to us and said that they don't want to move their elderly parents into Martinborough because they don't want their elderly parents having to be walking out or hitting their savings accounts to pay their rates. We don't need to be hearing about how our rates are compared with for the card from the mass ratepayers. That's rather condescending, I think. And then there's another issue. We had a local resident from Martinborough call the council office to discuss their rates and be told by a council employee that they should be lucky that they're not living in Carlton because the rates of Carlton are so much higher than Martinborough, which isn't helpful at all. And apologies, while we do appreciate apologies when a wrong has occurred, as Martinborough residents, we've had plenty of apologies. We've had apologies over in the vacant streets. And we all know that there's been underinvestment over the years, which is why, as ratepayers, we're quite happy. Well, not happy, but we accept that 14% plus rate increase. But then to keep on blaming those previous councils for that underinvestment, and we accept that, but that's wearing thin. So talk is cheap, apologies are helpful, but actions are needed. Actions speak louder than words. And in the options that have been put forward to resolve this issue, option 3 is forecast to provide savings of 320,000 going forward. So that's a savings of 1.8% on last year's rate take. 1.8% is peanuts compared to the $2 million extra that has been asked for ratepayers to pay over and above the 2021 rates. And immediately, Christchurch City Council is saving their ratepayers $800,000 to $900,000 a year, or this coming year. And that's the goal, to save that money for ratepayers. That's substantial action, and it speaks louder than words. Councillor Maynard, I understand you've already asked for a list of projects that could be deferred and their dollar values, but so far we haven't seen that list. Option 1 talks about amending the LTP and resetting the rates, but a figure of 100,000 has been thrown around as too possible. What is 100,000 compared to the $2 million worth of rates? That's only 5%. Spending 5%, 100,000 to review just at $2 million. Needs to rate take, reassess the budget, make with a view to making substantial savings, not just 1.8% in savings. This will show the ratepayers that you are taking action. You can make it some ways we're building the trust and respect on ratepayers to regain accounts. Again, actions speak louder than words. Thank you.
Thanks, Ed. I think you're preempting. Slides that we're going to be bringing up in the next part with regards to options available. I'm just trying to work out what the questions were, or whether it was a statement.
The question was, why do you quote the rates increase to 600 and something?
So what we do is, as I've said before, we are not collecting any more money because of the disparity in land values that's occurred through the revaluation. We are audited by Audit New Zealand, and we're not allowed to collect more money than we have put in our payment. So that is the discrepancies that I mentioned about the rating system that we have had for decades. And certainly we are pointing the figure at previous councils, and we have done, as you've been to all the meetings. But that's because we're doing the meetings and we're explaining what's going on. So if you've been to multiple ones, you can hear it multiple times. But it doesn't hide the reality of the situation we're facing, which is 10 years we've dribbled along doing the barest minimum, and it's biting us now. Now, as councillors, we don't go to a council table, we're all ratepayers and go, oh great, how much can we do? That's not the way it works. It's what we need to do. Now, I'll also say that every single person on the council is a poacher turned gamekeeper. We went and stood because we wanted to do better. We are not professional corporate chairs. We came in to change things, and we're making informed decisions based on the realities in front of us. So that's why we are looking back and trying to do the correct thing for the community and for the future.
Councillor West, I am sorry, but I actually made decisions about the rate rise based on the information that I was given. Just want to make that statement and make it very, very clear.
Cool. Good.
I wish to return to the three waters and ask the question, why did the council conceal from the ratepayers for nearly 15 months that they had signed a memorandum of understanding with the government over three waters, and received $2.8 million in August of 2019 to be used for shovel-ready products or projects and to be spent by March of 2022. Councillor Plymouth last at the Greytown meeting said that part of the loan you raised was the necessity to clean up the sewage running down Featherston's main street. I would put it to you, sir, the $2.8 million given to you for water and waste was an ideal project for you to get the shovels out to clean up Featherston.
Cool. So you've got a couple of statements there, most of them inaccurate, I'm afraid. So the MOU with the council is a good principle to have. The MOU that was signed by LGNZ, unknown. Sorry. So there's two MOUs. One is an MOU with regards to LGNZ not arguing with the government about the, so I thought that's the MOU, and that's actually fracturing councils around the country that they did that. What we did do, we were offered by the government to say we are going down three waters. Now here is a no strings amount of money to given to you during COVID for shovel-ready projects that we want you to spend on water, as long as you come to the table. There are no strings attached to that. Now, I actually think we would be foolish not to have done that, and we have allocated that money. It needs to be spent by March. I think we're up to July 2021. It was actually on staff. I had some council meetings, and it's all over the media. As soon as that was announced.
It was actually discussed at a council meeting as well. And it was, I can't remember the date of the meeting, but it was very much part of the public record. And we did have meetings of the public at the time when we were discussing that. So it was not something that was kept from the community.
And indeed, in the media, it was league tables about which council was getting what. I think Carsten got 1.9 million, Masterton got 5-something million, 50 million went to Hawke's Bay. So everyone knew what everyone was getting. It was not public.
Are you talking about the money that you got before, or the money you're expecting after?
We're expecting nothing afterwards, because we don't know when the three waters will be occurring. What they have allocated to the South Warrama District Council, if three waters goes ahead in return for taking our assets, is $7.2 million to be spent on water projects. Right? 7.5 million. It hasn't happened. And my problem with that is that it's actually a loan taken against the water entities, which will be paid for by you. So it's pretty sneaky.
Oh, thank you. I think I heard correctly. I think I heard at the beginning of this meeting the mayor say that the increase was not intentional. And I think I heard in Greytown, the chief executive say that he didn't respond to the comments from the June meeting about the 29% increase because he really believed it was because of land values. Both of those things are very frightening to me because they show a certain level of competence. And what I voted for, what talk about voting for people, was that they actually make conscious decisions, not unintentional decisions, and they actually make well thought out rational decisions. And there was a very senior professional financial person at that July meeting give you financials on why it was 29%. And so for 2 months you thought it was because of land values. Is very frightening. But that's my statement, not my question. My question is, on September the 3rd, we received the rates notice, the explanation signed by the mayor, the chief executive, and the councillors. And at a number of these meetings, I've heard people ask, who is responsible for the mistake? So I was very interested to read number 29, questions and answers, which I'm going to read, which says, who was responsible? And we're told that the long-term annual plans are deliberated and decided by councillors, and that councillors vote on the cost, and councillors determine the rating model. So would we hear from the councillors? Because it would appear that there's no accountability or responsibility being taken by the chief executive and his role. The question and answer says councillors are responsible. So could we actually hear from the councillors as to why on the 30th of June, they voted on a 29% increase in rates?
But I think you've asked that question already at various meetings.
I want to hear it.
Right, I think the lady said she wants to hear it too.
Okay.
I do not feel it is appropriate.
I'm sorry, I'm not limiting these members, and I want to hear what they have to say.
I do not think it's appropriate to run a lynch mob.
It's not a lynch mob, it's understanding the information.
What we are trying to do here is to explain to you what's going on and hear suggestions and the impact that this has had on you.
This question and answer says they are deliberating and deciding on my answers. The council are responsible for allowing the rate increase to go through. You wrote this answer.
The rate increase was a dollar value, which was indeed in 2020, 21 and 21, 22, agreed in public, and you've been provided them, and I'm sure it's one of the 100 OAA questions you've asked since July regarding this. So the answer has been made.
What I asked the money that you got for the shopping projects, which without any strings to be spent on water, and which doesn't obligate them in any way to breathe through water, which will probably overturn the next election anyway. What was spent on?
Do I have a list on that? I know that we're looking at upgrading and doing a water meter trial in Greytown. We looked at a replacement of a mains pipe underneath the railway in Featherston. There's been pipes replacement. There has been massive mapping of our infrastructure, and basically a lot of leak detection and repair.
So how much have you got left?
We will have it. We'll have the funding spent by July.
And as part of the answers to the question, you delineate what was spent on and make answers to questions?
Certainly we can. It's part of the Wellington Water minutes. Are we able to put that on our website for you? And we'll give you a very clear dollar by dollar basis. The requirement from the government is it must be spent within a time frame. But I don't have those figures at the top of my head.
Okay,
thank you.
Excuse me, mate. Thank you. We've got time for one more after this.
I believe not forget. I don't think there's any debate about the necessity for our basic services, and I don't think we disagree with that. And so if we want to have a good justice, we know what it is. And so I'm 40% of this what it is. I think the biggest issue that you always has a problem with here is the way in which the extra 15 round figures percentage increase was handled and how it was come to. And really concerns me that supposedly we've elected smart people and we have employed smart people to help us make these decisions. I'm starting to question whether we have actually elected and have employed smart people. And it's something I say to a lot of government politicians, which I work for as well, national government. It needs to be reminded that we employ you, not the other way around. You are answerable to us. We shouldn't be answering to your debate here. You need to answer to us. What is your solution and how are you going to fix it? That's it.
So part of the solution, hopefully, is that these meetings alone, that we are dropping our pants and telling you what happened. And the fact that we had a problem here and we are trying to fix it.
Can we get the nominated speakers chance? We'll get nowhere.
We're not getting you to answer the question.
Thank you, sir.
You want to tell him off for speaking because he's not the nominated speaker. Yeah, as a resident of this community, I feel very sad. There's such a division between council and ratepayers. We've had this for a while. And when you came to the community and wanted us to vote for you, Alex, do you remember what your rate proposal was then, or how you felt about rates? Yes. And what that number was, what that figure was? You had about rates, do you remember what that figure was? You supported rates.
I certainly supported wherever possible rates decreases.
You supported rates in line with inflation.
Yeah, cool.
Well, last time checked, inflation was 4.9% this year.
Yep.
We also had a long-term plan that had what, 14% or something like that. And then you've got caught with your pants down because it wasn't 14.9%, it wasn't even communicated. And that makes us lack faith in you, confidence, everything like that. Because there's such a disparity between the things you're saying, the things you're delivering, and the things you're now saying now. So as ratepayers, I don't think we've got any confidence in what you're doing or how you're going about it. And it makes it look as if you can't operate to a budget because you're constantly overspending money. And when we ask you for figures or sums like this gentleman here, or millions, or what this figure was, not only can you not supply them, you don't need to go and come back with information. A good example is innovative streets, where we probably still don't know what the number was that was spent on it, and it's been asked again and again and again. And yet in business, anybody that does business here will know their sums, will know their cash burn, will know exactly where they're spending, they should be able to come back pretty quickly. So I don't really get this disparity between cash burn and what we're getting for it as well.
Yep. And I'll tell you what, Alex, reality is a bitch. Because when you get to the table and you find out what actually needs to happen, it's a real wake-up call. But at least we're not dodging it. We're actually making the changes in order to do what we need to do.
And it's been forced on you though, because the rate level has been so high. And I take this woman's point over here that people just simply can't afford these rates. And I don't say, hold on, I just don't think you quite understand that, because there's people here that can't pay their insurances, they can't afford food. There's a whole, and that's the extreme, of course, these people in the community. But I just don't think you guys get that. And I think you do, but you really don't.
Well, actually, every email regarding rates and unaffordability that I've received, I have answered personally. I do understand the effect it's had on the community. And we will go through what we can do, are trying to do to limit it, but it doesn't affect the minimum requirements that we have to act responsibly as a council so that we can address the issues that we must address. So I apologise for the rates increase, but I do not apologise for the fact we need to do what we've got to do.
So I need to pass the mic on. But I didn't appreciate reading there in the paper that was criticising a lot of the opinion pieces that my fellow ratepayers were making to. Because you've come out in the newspaper in the Warwick Times article, yeah, it's inappropriate. And you've also come out in the Martinborough Star saying, not for us not to listen to these fellow voices. Finish please, not the newspaper. And I think that's highly inappropriate, because a lot of the comments that I've heard tonight
have been respectful, or they're asking you, you know, the right questions, and yet you seem to be dismissive in the media, and I don't think it does you any favours in your position with me.
Thank you. I will respond because I put up with a lot of flack and a lot of lies and a lot of misinformation, and that was the first time I responded. And that was purely because of a personal attack that was incorrect. And I feel I have the right as any citizen to respond appropriately. Thank you for your question.
I'm a local resident here for a number of years, a very long number of years, mainly on lives of our people. I'm in my 80s and I don't want answers back. I'm just going to tell you, with the rate rise we were promised originally, and our rates have gone up 38.2%. Now, where are we going to find that? We're having to give away a lot of things. You do things, you work hard all your life, and when you're older, we should be looked after a lot better, let alone the young ones that need the help and have got families. That's my, for the mayor, and that I just discussed.
And thank you for your comments. We do take them on.
So thank you for the opportunity to speak. Of all my everyone, I'll make a couple of observations and ask my question. Spirit of moving forward. So I do agree with people in the room. Very nice to the likes of a Cardinal or a Master makes no sense, especially when you look at their trajectory is pretty straight line. That's what this community would have expected rather than a significant increase. And also your baseline is coming off this community, not another community, and that's what we need to be managing to. So to bring in other communities is completely erroneous. But moving ahead, I saw again tonight a graph put up with some lovely percentages, that round circle graph. I think 3 or 4 years ago, I pulled it out as an issue, that it is a lack of transparency that we get when we're looking at numbers for this council. I'm not surprised that councillors can't find their way through the financials that they are looking at. And so you go back to, and I'm looking at the annual report here, and the report that we spent the extra $500,000 on water supply in the 2019-20 expected right when you were into issues. A further 2.8 million is committed into this financial year. We knew that we're into issues. But then we go, well, where did the 500,000 go that also was extra? You did spend the 215, did that come off the 2.8 that's further a commitment or not? Actually, where is the budget? Why don't we just have circle graph for the whole heap of percentages in it? We have a long-term plan that we can't pick out. Now, I know you have a process in government, but actually, why not start putting some real numbers in front of us that we can really understand, that the councillors can actually understand, that can have notes to it, and to be debated properly, rather than these circular sort of, what I would describe as opaque numbers at the time. Because I think we do have to spend money, I'm with Jim and a few others, we know we're into it, but we have to see it. And we have to understand when we're spending an extra $300,000 on governance and employee rates. And we have to understand when we're spending an extra, money on different things. And to the point of when we spend $75,000 on giving grants, what we need to understand is benchmarking that against the rest of the population. So that our budget numbers, we're way over keeping it against our population. And this is the piece about what was the importance of transparency of numbers. So I asked, don't put any more percentages up there. Don't go interchangeably between GST and non-GST. It makes it bloody hard to follow. And I think I've got a reasonable brain for numbers, but I can't get around all this all over the place. So just work on making it better, please.
Thank you. On that note, we'll draw a line across the questions at this point. And we'll move into the second part of this meeting. Excuse me. I have a question to ask. I have a question. I've come to this meeting. I've registered to come to this meeting. And are you cutting my question off? that's not good. I didn't see your hand up, sir. The question I'm going to ask is this. I want the mayor to answer this question. My rights, before I answer it, I live 15 kilometres out of town. I provide my own water, my own sewage disposal, my own dump disposal. I have a road going past my property. That's all I get. Can you tell me why my rates have gone up by 70%?
Yep. So you're in the same situation as me. I provide my own water and I get very.
I don't care what you're in. I don't care what I want to answer as to why my rates have gone up by that much.
Cool. I have answered it a couple of times, but I'll go over it again. We run a land value rating system. It is impartial when it comes to attributing the rates. The rate system is wrong. We need to change it. Your rates are dictated by the value that is put on your land by the value agenda. So yes, you are paying for services you do not receive. And that is why we're doing a rates review to change that. That's all we can.
So if the rate review comes up in my favour or country people's favour, will we get a refund?
You will not, because that's the rating system that we're operating under at the moment, and that's how council is. However, in the future, I would like to think that it will be much more realistic with regards to the services that you receive as a rural ratepayer.
We're running way over time.
I'm just going to take control of the speaker. I was at the meeting, so I know that they much cut off at 8 o'clock, pretty much after 8 o'clock. So if you don't get your questions in, then that's basically too bad. So could you please keep them brief, to the point, and actually ask a question now, because we've gone past the halfway mark and we still actually haven't covered the second half of the meeting, which is to discuss where we can actually save money and possibly reduce people's rates next year. So just point. I have a whole series of questions because I did go through the LTV and try to add up the numbers, and a couple of them don't balance. So in response to what Harry offered on Monday in Featherston, I'd like some more detail behind what makes up those statements. Because as you said, page 108 is a balance sheet. It shows a surplus of 4.8. Page 111, I think this respective cash flow statement also shows a surplus of 3.3. So one of them's got to be a cash flow forecast. But I also have some questions about the funding statements that don't add up to the total of 19.9 million GST exclusive that you say that you have to raise. So it seems to be 600,000 missing. On top of that, I have a whole series of other questions about why the increases, but your offer, Harry, on Monday night to provide more detail, does that still stand?
Absolutely.
Okay, so I will email a series of those questions to all of you and the councillors next week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That was basically my question as well. We need the detail for the increase in rates that helps with allocation. Not just allocating it to operational areas. We need the detail. That's the problem I have with credibility of this council, is the permission to take care of accounts of their expenditure. Where is the detail of the budget? Some more information on that.
So the detail of cost centre, cost, proportional overheads, sits inside council. If we want to see that information, we have to make it available. This is the summative information. So we can.
You will?
Yeah.
We will the detailed budget be available?
As soon as we can organise our team to find them.
It seems surprising that you do not have that information already. Why else have you come up with expenditures?
We do.
Well,
I'm just saying it's just a matter of, it's now Thursday. So if we can do that as soon as possible, do that.
Thank you. Maybe move on now. There'll be another opportunity to ask questions. Thank you.
Right, so as we've mentioned, we looked at 3 options. Following weeks of discussion and workshops. Option 1 was to amend the long-term plan, to make a significant reduction in costs and decrease our level of services as a result, and then reset the plans. That was option 1. Option 2 was to reset the rates but make reductions in costs that don't reduce levels of service. Or option 3 was to make cost reductions that don't reduce the levels of services, but carry those savings on to the next financial year. Now, if you look at the long-term planning sheet, there's a graph coming up on that, but we have a predicted rates increase of 8% next year. And we're looking at trying to cover those, put those savings through to look at a reduction in that area. So this is what we discussed. So redoing the long-term plan, given that we are halfway through the first year, would actually add to our costs. So we would have to break contracts, we would have to do redundancies, we would have to reconsult with the public, because if you have a reduction in service levels, you have to do a full consultation with the public, which we've already done. It would have to be re-audited by Audit New Zealand. And I do not think, I'm told, that it would actually be done before we got round to the next annual plan anyway. Audit New Zealand is running 3 months behind. The first and most easy question to ask is, let's get rid of some staff.
We got 3 managers
and
screen.
It is a myth that our council staff are overpaid, and certainly there's been some rather nasty letters in the paper about this as well. We've run an initial benchmarking on what we are paying, and we're finding that we're actually underpaying. That will be firmed up with a more complete benchmarking exercise, but we have a new HR, we actually have an HR manager now. And we are really struggling with increases in costs and poaching from central government because of our proximity to Wellington. When we go to breaking contracts, we have contracts for roading, we have contracts for SOIs on water, we have contracts with people in amenities, and that would actually hurt us in this financial year more than the savings would be. Also, resetting the rates, if we're changing our level of service, creates a lot of administration costs. So enabling option 2, we think would be between $20,000 and $40,000. We're not sure. And we're not sure whether we could actually do it with the staffing we have. So then we said,
option 2, Alex, 20 to 40K.
20 to 40K. Yep. Yeah. So we're still firming up those costs on exactly what, but there's a lot of ifs and buts in that. We had a huge consultation process. We had 800 plus submissions, and the feedback from the public was we wanted to continue our current levels of service and increase our infrastructure investment. And we are required to take those submissions into account. So it's very difficult to increase what you're doing and increase the quality of your assets while reducing costs. So we ended up looking. Yeah, so we took into account these things when we were looking at how we were going to approach the public reaction to the rates and how we were going to manage it. We have been firmly told we do not want to decrease service levels and the infrastructure investment should increase. Admittedly, in the long-term plan, they did not want the more expensive version of infrastructure investment in water, but they did want it increased. We wanted to get some things, we had to get some things across the board quick. We were in a very contentious regulatory environment that we had to be fulfilling our standards. People have often commented about selling land. We own a lot of land in Featherston. We own some properties here and there, like spectacularly one in Greytown. But the thing is that when that land was purchased, it was purchased by a rate for a particular purpose. And the one that's popped up a lot has been the Featherston Golf Course. If that is sold, then for a start, the loan that was used to purchase it has to be repaid. And then the money needs to go into the reserve that it came from or is being paid from. Council finances are made up of buckets and you can't mix them or it gets very angry. So in the past, and I have been a critic of previous councils, that we were selling land to help with rates and hiding the true cost of what we needed to be paying. And there's a few examples in your sheets, I think they are, of some of the land that we've sold that I do not think we should have.
Well, I bought one of those pieces of land and sold it to me for exactly what you asked. There's no pushing for it.
Yep. What I'm saying is the selling of that land doesn't help us long term. So any surplus from the sale of the land would have to go into the reserves that they came from and then be spent on the reserves. That's the way local government works. It does.
No, it doesn't.
So the benefits of any changes that we're looking to make have to outweigh the costs of those benefits. And so our preferred option as council was option 3, where we've signalled that we're looking wherever we can to reduce costs, and we'll show you a list of them in a minute, and that we would apply those costs to any predicted or expected increase in the 2022-23 year. But to show you, so that we can retain our current service levels as per our LTP and consultation, that Finance Audit and Risk will monitor the savings that we're making and whether we're actually making those gains and carry those over to the next financial year. And with the intention of reducing next year's LTP rates increase of 8% down, assuming nothing changes. And that we don't have another spike in construction costs, that we don't have increased regulation from the government and compliance costs. So the savings we've identified, and we are more than happy to take suggestions and we'll write them down and we'll consider them for the council meeting. Are these 7 areas? However, you will note that a number of them have the word delay. And what we're doing is just deferring the pain of what we need to do. We need to have a representational review. We need to consider multi-wards. We need to look at a lot of things about the way the voting system, the representation, the number of councillors.
If that's all you've got, that's a huge concern. You know what I mean?
Yep.
I'll speak for all the right.
What I'm saying is that you can make suggestions as you want. If you have been through,
Paid over $100,000.
I've already covered a rate and the fact that our benchmarking is that we're paying less. Sounds great, 100. I get more than that. However, if we want to get good staff, we need to pay market. That's been past the problem. That's been past the problem with council.
Is that we paid over $100,000 in council versus 3 years ago?
More.
A lot more.
Yeah, and there's a reason for that. So the other ones we're looking at is delaying the commencement of the rating review. I don't think it's a wise move. We can delay the project of digitization of historical files. We've already looked at revising the economic development budget and $58,000 worth of repairs and maintenance savings. We are more than happy to take emails or for you to contact us and give us other suggestions. But I'll tell you what, when you look at this compared, what you're seeing is the fact that there was nothing nice to have in that LTP budget. We are scraping the bottom of the barrel here with ideas. So that means we can do it straight away. We maintain our current service levels and it doesn't require another audit and another consultation plan. We continue to improve our assets. It causes the least disruption. It creates minimal additional costs and is consistent with the feedback we've had. We're a small council. We don't want to increase rates to increase staffing. We only increase staffing as we must. We do want your feedback on our plans, and they will be taken into account on the 17th of November. And we need to work together to fix it. And we do actually appreciate your ideas and suggestions that you bring forward.
You need to come up with something that's revolutionary, really going to change the game. This is
So there's the forward projection and the long-term plan for the next 10 years on our rates increases, and we need to change this. Part of this will help with a rating review and moving to a more user pays type of system with regards to dog control, with regards to subdivision costs, reserve contributions, and that's part of that rating review. So, and I'll take your point earlier, Jim. This is probably untenable. We need significant government intervention to decrease the burden on the ratepayer to provide what they expect us to provide. So it's a bit tongue in cheek, but we are looking at different ways to reduce that burden with the user pays. We're also looking at ways that we can have tourism related businesses paying for additional costs associated with tourism, including Destination Wairarapa. And that user pays model with regards to water usage. So that's where we're at. We are encouraging you to email us with specific ideas if you look through the LTP or you identify areas, but there is still opportunity to make feedback at this point as well. How do you go?
Thank you, Mayor. Actually, we'll pick up a question again. Sir. Where's the microphone?
Thank you for that breakdown. I'll talk my loud voice. Thank you for that breakdown. It was just interesting that the sorry. It was really giving them options that were sitting around basic services. I still think that the spider in the wood pile was its loan. Have you not considered how they pay off that loan and save the public? Just seems to, and I'm sure you have looked at it, but it's not evident in the slide. It's all about services. You can't cut services. No. But for safety, it's welfare, you've got to have staff dealing with it.
Yeah. So with regards to that loan, we've taken it out for a 5-year term. If we paid it back earlier, it would cost us more in rates right now. The other option to reduce rates is to pay it over a longer period, but there would be rate fees as well on that. And we have factored in the fact that we're better to get this off our back moving forward over our 5-year period.
So the council's going to get a lot back, the ratepayers can't handle it. I think that's a message that's not quite getting here.
So that's one of our options, is to look at smoothing that out over or perhaps putting it against an asset and smoothing it out over even more years. That's fine.
On the line, is it 0.5%?
We borrow through the Local Government Financing Act around about 1.8 at the moment.
You guys can borrow money direct from the government at 0.5%.
No, that's incorrect. Banks can. At the moment, under COVID regulations, they dropped it for Australian-owned banks or trading banks at a special rate, which I don't think they've changed.
I'm curious as a ratepayer about the land asset. The councils obviously then includes parks and recreation, etc. But as a ratepayer, where can I access find out what the land asset is in South Warwick? That really intrigues me.
What's that from? They're not broken, so the land assets aren't broken down here. We can provide you with that list.
Yeah. Because in my opinion, a council should be in the business of land development for community use.
Oh, indeed.
So there's an opportunity there. It should be looked at.
Yeah.
You're not the council. You're not the
no, we're not a land. We're not a land company. So lower half of that. I'll tell you what. One of the last couple of pieces of land that the council sold, one of them we immediately had to rent back. And actually, if we go right back to the council selling the old library in Jellicoe Street, and they also leased that back. So you only sell it if you have absolutely no need for it. And that's a process we go through to say, do we need this land anymore? And we're very open and transparent about that, and it's discussed in council. The actual dollar values are put into public excluded because they're commercially sensitive, but then they're released later on.
Can that be put on your website? Or will you?
Definitely.
Yeah.
I asked you about Councillor Maynard had asked for a list of projects and the dollar values that could be available to make savings. Was that list what has been put up in option 3? Or
yes.
So 320,000, which is 1.8% of last year's rate table, is the savings that we made to reduce rates for next year.
If you do not reduce levels of service. So you don't do pipe renewals, you don't do road renewals, you don't do minute painting, re-roofing. So there are a whole number. So come back to that slide where I talked about 75% of council's business being infrastructure, waste management, roading, and so forth. But just to put that in perspective, 1% of rates is $175,000. 1 kilometre of sealing and renewing a road is 400,000 Okay, so when you look at that graph on the 10 years, I just want you to get that in perspective. So when you had that large spike and the 3 years out, that's to do with feathers and wastewater. So the list of projects the council has, other than those that impact on changing the level of service, is that.
So levels of service for rural ratepayers by cutting last year at the long-term plan, the 1K of task sealing and gravel road for $400,000. So rural ratepayers are having services cut and their rates are increasing, going up and up and up. So the rural ratepayers already in Canada, so a decrease in level of service and an increase in rates.
So so we have 700 kilometres of rural road in our network total. Sorry, we have 700 kilometres of road in our network. 260 kilometres of that is unsealed. What council removed from trying to offset some of the rates increases for our rural community was removing the cost of 1 kilometre we seal every year. So it's to do with the reskill of 1 kilometre, which effectively does not change the level of service that we provide.
Well, it did for the road park,
And on top of that, Aidan, you may remember that resolution, I think Councillor Jefferson brought that up, that we would review that in the annual plans in July 2022.
Thank you. Definitely. So you said that is the. I'm sorry if I say I'm a little bit amused because when you describe your process of generating the long-term plan, you took consultation, you listened to what people want, and they came back with a whole lot of things that they really did want. And then you worked out how much it was going to cost. And worked out it's going to increase our rates by 28%. Surely at that stage, you should have said, well, hey, hang on, we can't actually supply all these things that people want. And maybe you should have gone back a little bit and said, how can we adjust what we're supplying so we can actually. That's what any sensible board of governance can actually do. And I really do think you missed both when you didn't do that. I'm really surprised. One of the councillors got up and said, hey, hang on, we cannot afford to increase the rates by that amount. We've got to do something about it. Anyway, then I'll come on to the fact that in your options you consider, you should have heard the people tonight. Everyone's saying a lot of people cannot afford their current rates. So I think your option 3 is totally the wrong option. You've got to go back to option 2 and try to reduce the rates as soon as possible, particularly for those people who just cannot afford it. And maybe instead of just saying without reducing services, we are all intelligent adults here. If you tell us you've got to reduce rates by so much that this means you have to have this, less of this, or less of that, I'm sure you get general agreement around this. And just one final thing of your suggestions. I noticed in the long-term plan, the budget for staff and suppliers went up from 1.1 million to 2.2 million. So I suggest that's a very good place to start in looking for cost savings.
If we change our levels of service, I think we've indicated that there's a lot of costs associated with that. So that's probably why we're looking at doing something in the annual plan next year and looking at cost savings there. 50% at least, I think, of the consultation document was how we could save money, how we could, the rural roads being an option, the closing of the transfer station in Greytown, which didn't go ahead. It wasn't all about increasing spend. Some of the stuff we were looking at was how to decrease spend as well. We can't ignore that submission document and the information we received from that under Local Government Act. We must react to those opinions of the public that were given to us.
You're not reacting, sorry, we can't afford it.
Well, I think I've stated a number of times, we're doing the barest minimum anyway. So it's not a matter of not affording it, it's a matter of what is the absolute minimum we must do to fulfill our obligations, not only to the government, but with regards to our asset. With regards to the fact that there are a number of people that cannot afford it, we are aware of that. And I'm going to hand over to Harry to talk about what we're doing within council to assist those people.
Alex, I just feel like this is not a deep dive. You can deep dive into these costs because I actually think like you're maybe not listening and hearing what the ratepayers are saying. And I say this respectfully because you actually need to cut costs. You need to really slash. And yet I feel like you're still saying, oh, our wages are increasing and the amount we want to be paid is increasing. Let them go then and employ people locally for less. You know, maybe do only pay rates online so that don't send out rates. You need to be deep diving into all this stuff a lot more than what this is getting saying.
And thank you for your opinion, Alex. And we've taken that on board, that it's your opinion. And we are trying our best within the structure we have and the requirements we have to do this anyway. But we will note down your suggestions and you're more than welcome to email me any other suggestions.
Just being specific about that, we actually changed our website and our internet system. It was based on a thing called Drupal 6, which hadn't been supported in the last 10 years. Simply to be able to do that, we can enable online transactions for people to pay for costs and reduce their costs. So just asking us, we have been trying to do all those types of things. Could I just comment on the about what we are trying to do for people in departure? Look, if you know of there's anyone in departure, please ask them to call us. We offer and we can advise people of a number of options. So the first, there's about 4 things to get printed. The first is we offer payment plans for people. And so people can contact us so we can basically arrange a payment plan for them over a period of time. We're finding that's very effective. Actually, we haven't had a lot of people asking us for that, but we would want to be able to offer that service to anyone who asks. The second option is the rates systems of DIA. People apply for a rebate through the Department of Internal Affairs, and so we offer that support to people looking to contact that. There's a further option, which is a very hard option, which is rates postponement. So that means that people are able to effectively postpone their rates until the time that they sell their house. That's an incredibly sensitive and hard decision to make. We've had no one ever take that up, but it is there. It's been applied in a lot of towns in similar situations to ours where people have an asset, but they just do not have the cash flow to do that. So look, anything considered, if people are having difficulty, we have the ability to waive penalties, all those kinds of things. So if anyone we know of people who are hardship, please ask them to contact us so we can provide them the support and advice on their options.
Thank you. Very patient. Thank you. I'd like to thank these ladies for actually asking for documents, and we'll be given long-term plan budget. That's great. Thank you very much. But my question goes back to the slide about the savings. You could say it's taken you 5 weeks to get to that point. It's very simplistic, but if I want to buy a new car and I've already got the $30,000 in the bank, I've already collected the rates, to postpone that to next year doesn't save me anything. So could you explain why postponing costs from this year, when you're already collecting the money from us, to next year is actually making a saving? Is that too simplistic? I don't understand that.
So we're planning an 8% rate increase next year, which we've foreseen, and then those out years. What we're trying to do is identify those savings that we can make that don't produce a commitment for the next financial year. Some of those do, some of those don't. That's why I put up a call list and we invite your comments. So that the intent is to try and reduce the 8% rate increase as planned for next year.
Most of them were postponed. It looked like on the slide, I can't see the slide, but then if you put a slide with any savings, it would be useful to know what the savings are rather than.
There's a total of 238,000. 338,000. So it is on the bottom of that slide. It's in your handouts.
What I don't understand, this is where I understand. Total potential savings, 328. If I don't buy my car this year and I buy it next year, I'm saving nothing. If you postpone representation review, rates review, liaison, historical files, and all of those are postponed to next year, they're not savings. Are they?
Yes, they are. We plan to spend them, and we're not going to spend that money.
Until next year. Says I'm like, oh, I have 30,000 in the bank. I don't buy a car this year. I buy it next year. I haven't saved anything.
We're saving budgeted expenditure.
You're not saving the whole thing. A third of that cost you have to spend next year.
Could we keep the speakers on
I was interested in the theory.
the gentleman next to you?
Oh, sorry. Can I just, since I've got this, so the thing that I think, when I look at this, 328,000, what you're hearing here is If you're in a situation, so you're a council, right? Yes, you're legislated and you've got all this stuff that you can potentially hide behind. But the reality is, you're an entity, you're in a crisis, right? Your bank of ratepayers, that's us, are calling you up and saying, we're not going to give you 1.5 million, and therefore, actually, that is not acceptable. So you are in a crisis. Responding with a lack of crisis response is not going to get respect from us. And you don't need to go back and go to LTP, and you don't need to go back through this again. The fact is, you can negotiate your way out of it. Like, we know that infrastructure is the big expenditure item. We know that's in the millions, we can see that. But that means that there are suppliers involved, there are ways to spread that across. And that's where you get to work, is in that big ticket infrastructure item. No, you don't have to reduce the services, but you have to find another way through it. And that's what we would be expecting to see, rather than $328,000 when you are sitting in a crisis. So we would ask that you go and you look at spreading infrastructure investment and changing the way that you go back around doing it. And yes, we do want to see that budget, but within that, especially where the big ticket money is being spent, which is infrastructure. That's where the millions are going. That's where the millions shifted over. The 2019 was increased over budget. As into this year over budget, obviously, more and more. And so where is it and how do you spread in that? And I don't think that just saying, oh, we can't negotiate with suppliers is an acceptable answer, because every one of us in our day-to-day lives go back and to negotiate and to work. And you are in a crisis. So I wouldn't ask that you go away and look at big infrastructure and how you move it, because that's what any other business would have to do in New Zealand. And then there's government.
You're closing it down, that's brilliant. No, I'm not closing it down. I'm saying we've taken a different approach. We've written that down. We will consider that. But at the moment, in your opinion, I may differ.
That's what I'm asking you to look at your big spend item. That is my question.
We're all telling you that.
I'm telling you that.
Thank you, Mr. Robertson. I just want to talk about some things here that I think that just the weekend, this thing has got straight. Now, when I look at it and I see a rate increase coming out in quite a large percentage, I look around the world and say, where the hell else is that going on? I can't see it. So the thing I would be saying to myself is, how do I get down to a more meaningful rate review that we can accommodate? And you haven't done that. You're still not doing it. This is rubbish. This is nothing. What you need to do is go back and say, how can I live within my budget? You need to start living within your budget of where you're paying for it. Start thinking about where you want to put the budget, how much you can afford. Because if you can't do that, you're wasting everybody's money.
Exactly what they need to do.
Yeah. And problem is, in response to that, is we have been living outside the budget for the last 10 years because we have not, and that's your opinion. However, we have, our rates have been artificially low.
Would you like people to default their rates?
Of course we don't.
And then you've got to pay for something else, because what you're doing is saying to everybody else, can you pay it? No, I can't. Okay, then I'll move away. So start thinking about where you're getting your money from.
We do.
You don't.
We do.
You're just not listening. You're not listening.
What we've got is we're stuck between the rock and a hard place of what we must do versus what it would be nice to do. The budget has been artificially low for too long.
Well, that's changing again.
Oh my
hold it up closer to your mouth.
It's fine, two bananas. All right, my name is Sandy Namoki, and I don't have questions for you. However, I do have comments. Firstly, to the table, ngā mihi. To the councillors, ngā mihi. And to the ratepayers, ngā mihi nunu. Now, I look at these things, I actually have to say that I attended the meeting on Monday night and I felt threatened. I felt threatened and intimidated because of the arrogance that flowed through on that night from the presenters. When we are told that this is how it is, I'm talking the three options, the four options, whichever they were, and that if you don't take this option, then it's going to cost you money. We're all totally aware of that. However, when I am told to suck eggs, that's when I come out fighting. And in this case, so I decided, okay, I was not going to say anything on the night. I would register and come back to this one and have another listen. Thinking that, well, maybe I got things wrong. However, tonight has shown me that things are really, really bad. In the first part of the presentation, it was about apologising and how we could have done better. There was no resolution whatsoever on how we are going to do things better or how we can fix things right here and now. In the second part, I see they're trying to take from Peter to pay Paul. This was here as a prime example. But taking from the subcommittees which were set up and say, well, possible life savings identified, $300,000 to be taken out of here and put back. I don't see the difference, even though selling these properties, which were badly bought in the first instance, and telling me that they have to go, whatever the profits are, go back into the reserve. Fine. Where is the repayment for this one going to go? Is it going to ever be repaid? So to me, there is no difference whatsoever in taking from this figure to pay that for and not doing it with the other way. Now, so that's my beef with the way this whole thing is set up. Now, I also see on this data that have been presented that the ratepayers, the income is 71% from the ratepayers. It was lovely to hear the gentleman over here saying, we put you there, we pay your wages, or your honorariums, whichever way you would like to put it, and these things are saying, he giveth, he taketh. Now, in order for this to happen, if the ratepayers decided to rate strike, after the second quarter, you will be crippled. And it's all it takes is for the three wards to get together as one and say, we are all not paying our rates, or even the majority. And that in itself, ratepayers, gives you a damn good negotiation process where you are able to negotiate. So we all put our rates aside for every time we go and pay it, right? Well, instead we can still continue to put those monies aside So that when we come back to the negotiating table, we can say, here's the rates that were, here's all the back rates, here's all my back rates, but I'm not paying the bills. That is where the ratepayers have it. Oh, somebody seems searching my mail. This is just something for all of us as ratepayers to ponder. I am really quite. This has been going on for too long. Yes. They're telling us, councillors telling us that we have, it's going to cost us all this amount of money to go with the other few options, and it will take months to succeed. If we go through a rate strike, you're on notice now. If the ratepayers decide, yes, they are going to rate strike, and I said it will cripple you, and you will need to come back and eat humble pie. Now they didn't follow it, they're not the power.
Thank you. Thank you. It's quite a contribution. We're pushing up against our time. Does anyone have anything particularly pressing that they want to add to?
Yes.
My name is Peter Jones. I just wanted to ask you about predicting an 8% rate increase next year. Will their current inflation at 5%, is that then a true going to be 13%? And if so, we need to help you to find and say not hundreds of thousands, but at least $1 million, because otherwise you're going to be sitting here for another year's time, because your money for the 5% increase that's going on at the moment isn't going to cut it, so it's going to be more than 8%.
Yeah.
And I've just got one other thing to say. That bit of legislation that muzzles all of our councillors from speaking out for what happens in council, like everyone was muted from saying anything about the 29% rate increase. That has to go. That has to be changed.
Okay, just to answer that question first, it's on the agenda for the 17th? Yep. 17th of November code of conduct. Sorry, it's the next council meeting, isn't it? Which day is it?
We've got a workshop with the
So we are moving to change that really quickly. It's an old code of conduct. It was the local government standard 10 years ago. We're adopting the new local government New Zealand standard. Sorry, the other part of the question was the construction index. Yeah, inflation. So our costs are driven by the construction index. As Peter slightly pointed out, it's not CPI. And you're absolutely right. We are really worried about what's happening in the construction price index, the cost of materials, we have a lot of our works in terms of trying to receive materials we need to do them have been impacted by COVID, overseas ports, those types of things, and we're really worried about the cost of supply, and we're budgeted at a certain level, and we do not want to see an increase. But there's some things that we're just out of our control.
Okay, John, Rob, you need a microphone?
You need the mic. I'm sorry, the microphone is no battery.
I've got 3 very quick points to make, and I want to support our colleague here who's disappeared from 5 minutes ago. You've lost the trust of your community. You need to redress that. And councillors, when you look at what options you've got, think about how you redress the trust of your communities. $300,000 won't do it. You promised 14% rate increase. You gave us 29.6%. You said we apologise for that. Today, for the first time, you admitted you made a mistake. you have to redress the mistake and do some of it again next year. You need to address the trust that you have lost. It is absolutely solid loss of trust. The second point I want to quickly make is you stopped using the Office of the Auditor General to back you. That's interesting. Because I got a letter today from the Office of the Auditor General saying we do not endorse council statements. We acknowledge we didn't pick up the difficulty in the consultation for our audit. We see this now as a thing between the council and their community. Nothing to do with the Office of the Auditor General. They acknowledge there's been a mistake. Third point, Mr. Mayor, I think 3/4 of an hour ago, you probably called me a liar. I don't mind that. I've been called far worse than that in my time. I'm from one way. I've been called far worse than that in my time. I know I'm right. These people know I'm right. And you need to redress the trust.
In terms of the Office of the Auditor General letter, that's publicly available. We have a copy of that and we made it available as part of our meeting on the 27th. On the 27th, so we've made that publicly available. We have drawn arrangements.
Are you talking about the letter?
Yes.
Yes. That says nothing like what you said on Monday. It was never intended as advice to you.
I'm just saying that this is a copy of an anonymised reply to people who wrote it, and I'm just saying to John, what I'm saying is it's publicly available, people can read it.
Let's move on. Ladies next week.
Yeah. Well, I was lucky enough to go to the first of these 3 race meetings in Greytown. And I have to say, Mayor and CEO and councillors, someone's done a lot of work in the interceding period to produce this glossy, multi-page production. But you know, your performance is much slicker tonight. But I'm not sure that you've got any more trust tonight than you had in Greytown. But thank you for the work, whoever did this. Someone in the council. Thank you.
Thank you, Lizzie. That was actually done by Adam Blackwell at no charge.
Right on the one is actually state highway, so you guys don't even pay for it. So I'll give you some details. You talk about saving money and we go on our Carlton, or once again, you can't hear at Carlton. Carlton will have a lot better service than this council does. They have your own staff, mow the lawns, mow the birches, look after the cemetery like it's a bowling green. We get none of that from this council. I have a couple of bugbears. I have a business on road infrastructure. Been doing it for quite a long time now. The guy I bought the business off actually used to have a subcontract to the contractor's new contract. He tried to approach the council on basis before you guys, of course, and offered to do it direct. And they told me couldn't, which cost the rate about 30% more for the services he was doing. If you look at the roading side of it, if you want to cut costs, you go back to the way the gravel roads in the rural area. Back in the day, when we used to do it, and it was using the natural resources capital was in the area, it would have cost you now, say, ballpark for $15 a tonne for gravel, and you're probably paying $55 a tonne for the way it's done. So that would be a massive saving. My biggest bugbear is the fact that you pay bond on water. If you guys actually had any credibility, you go to the office tomorrow and people go, I would love to know the figures you pay them. I know people will, I know what their consultant fees are. I know other contractors that I've worked on, good friends with, live in the wherever.
that have quoted jobs, and there's another one job in particular you guys are currently getting done, and I know it was quoted before local water took over, and when they took over, they put a hold on it, the job doubled. Okay, on another contract that I was talking to recently, was asked to go and price a job for you guys, which I'm picking through Wellington Water. I can confirm that if I go and ask the guy. He turned up here a couple of days later to price the job. While he was there pricing it, diggers turned up, other machinery turned up. He said, what's going on? I said, oh, we're here to do this job. He said, you kidding? I said, yeah, he said, I've been asked to come and quote. So the way they are doing it, because you're using Wellington people, not Warwick people, to put money back into our local economy. And have no local knowledge whatsoever. That job has been done at approximately 3 times the cost it should be done. So it's about time you guys got in those offices with whoever runs these jobs and sort this shit.
As a run out of time, but I agree with your comments. Some of that. So certainly I've raised the issue with regards to local contractors at the Wellington Water Committee. We are in a contract with Wellington Water, which takes 3 years to break. Wellington Water will not exist in 2 years with water reform. So really what we're...
Also been told in my regard that they're planning on leaving the dams like quicker.
And I don't think that, I've raised this as well with the CEO, that Wellington Water does not, we're the only rural council within Wellington Water, and they don't fit well. I think with working remotely without using local contractors. Yeah. Yeah. That being said, Wellington Water certainly with their experience in the head office has assisted us greatly with regards to drinking water standards. They're very good at that, but I don't think I've made it a secret that I'm critical of Wellington Water.
I'll tell you for a fact.
Yep.
The guy who worked for Carlton Council was recently was more qualified than any of those ones.
Yep.
He could have just gone to Carlton Council and got the end of it.
And it's a shame, I think, that we didn't look at a Wairarapa water model prior to signing up with Wellington Water, but that's history, and that was done. The other issue with regards to roading is we have a joint roading contract with Carlton, trying to share services, Wairarapa roads, Rumanga roads. And that's Fulton Hope. And we know the
in fact, that's half the problem for a start. And myself, as many other contractors, drive past their quarries and drive for another 20 minutes to Marston and back to get their gravel because the gravel makes crap and it's no longer the roads.
Yeah. So yeah, we have issues in those areas, but it's very hard to break those contracts. Without messing, because Fulton Hogan will do you for big time.
We're not and I know also you guys have done it. When those contracts were taken on, they shouldn't have been taken on purely on price. I know we hear about trying to save money. Yeah. This to do with quality. There's actually a big saving in the first.
And those are very good points. Yeah. Right.
I know it's going on about hardship. Stuff like that. In some context, I work with that every day and I see it every day. And to be honest, your solutions for people approaching me about having hardship, it's not really acceptable. These people find it very hard to approach anyone, let alone the council. Their level of pride that it takes for them to come to you and say they are struggling to reach there to pay their bills is not something that they can do. You are not offering services to people who really struggle to pay these bills. Like rebates and holding off payments is not a solution for those people that cannot afford it, not today or tomorrow or next month. There needs to be a better solution for those people. And I keep trying to advocate for these people because they are too bloody nervous to do it themselves. Now, while I'm standing up, you might just know that our decision here was in Parliament and that it is in this submission stage, so that's good.
I just want to about the this is really weird. So we get detailed saving of $350,000. And you can, for example, breaking contractors costs money. But there's no attempt to detail. Why contracts are 50, how long are they for, what's the value? That would then enable this group of people to understand what wasn't accepted here and how it's. Okay. You're right up against time. You've got over time. I know that a lot of you would want to say stay here all night. John, first.
Just really close to comment. I think you've heard from everyone here. You know what people think about what we do. You know what people's problems are with the rates. I suggest that you consider trying to answer those and justify yourselves. You take it on board and go away and reconvene amongst yourselves and try to solve it.
Thank you, well,
Thank you very much. I will close the meeting off. I know a lot of you would like to say more, have more to offer than the rest of it. I suppose you want to. But thank you.